Hello and welcome to the Queen Bee podcast, where the stories of regional women come alive, resonate and inspire. I'm your host, Tanya Rutherford, and together with a passionate team of women, we've painted this landscape for you. In truth, this podcast is about gathering the stories of women who live in regional and remote Australia to bridge those gaps, to create communities, and of course, to tell the richness in their journeys. Now, if anything does come up for you today, please be kind to yourself. You can share it with us, whether that's through our socials, our Queen Bee community, or you can send us a DM. Hello and welcome to the Queen Bee podcast. In this episode, we're spending time with the amazing Natalia Muszkat. Natalia and I have previously worked together doing some activation workshops for the Queensland Social Enterprise Council, and that's how I actually came across Natalia, and how I got into social enterprise as well was through her. Natalia is involved in so many things that I think the shortest way to introduce her is just to say that she is driven to make a difference for people in her community and beyond. Welcome, Natalia.
Hello.
So I guess to start off with, I would love to hear a bit more about your story and how you actually came to be in Australia.
Oh, okay. Well, it's
Bring right back.
Yeah. Well, I was born in Argentina. So, and I never, ever thought that I was going to live here eventually, later on in life. I always loved traveling. And when I was about 21, I went traveling, backpacking. I didn't know what to do. I wasn't sure. I went to uni, but I wasn't really into it. And then, and that was something that people did at the time anyway. So let's go backpacking around the world.
Yep.
So I got a ticket from Buenos Aires to, I think it was New York, and then from there to London, and then from there back home to Buenos Aires. And in my travels, I met lots of people, and one of those was Darren, which then, many years later became my husband. But then in the meantime, I came to Australia to visit him. I went back home, and then I came here at Sydney at the time, because he was in Sydney. However, he grew up in Boyne Island, so in the Gladstone region. So we used to come up and visit his dad and other family members all around Queensland. So eventually, many years later, when we were about to have a baby, our first baby, there was a transfer that came up as an opportunity for Darren to move here. And we wanted to leave maybe Sydney to go to a place where we had more space. Sydney was always expensive, but now I'm thinking about it. Our first home in Blacktown, in the area of Blacktown, was $270,000. And we thought that was expensive anyway. But now I think, I guess our parents and grandparents would have thought the same thing. I just don't know where it's going to stop, to be honest. But so we ended up moving to Gladstone, and then now I'm in Turnham Sands, and we had two kids. So the first one that came first when we moved, and then Thomas a couple of years later. And now I'm divorced, but anyway, that came later on.
That wasn't involved in you coming to Australia.
No. That was we still, both of us, live nearby, and the kids spend half the time with me and half the time with him, and we both have different partners. So.
And so, what do you love most about Australia?
Well, it is kind of funny, because lots of people ask me, well, do you miss home, and will you go back? Even like when people will ask me when I separated, that was almost 10 years ago now. And it's like, oh, would you go back home? And it's like, well, actually, I was 21 when I left. So I didn't really, I learned to be an adult here.
Yeah.
So, and right now, I lived in this country longer than I've ever lived there. So, because I'm 47. So it's interesting. What I like about Australia, well, lots of things. and some things are, and I guess from a migrant perspective, and also I guess depends what you compare it to, obviously.
Yeah.
But well, it's very stable. One of the things I loved when I first moved here, which was very different to where I came from, was that sort of sense of not so hierarchical,
Yep.
where we more sort of, even though we have titles and things, we also, I used to have just an entry level job in the city, and it come Friday night or Thursday afternoon, and then we'll all go to the pub, and I will be sitting with the CEO of a company, and I was, the temp that will come and go from the temp agency to all these different places. So that was something that you didn't really experience where in Argentina. However, I also know that things are here are a little bit more individualistic, and we think a bit more about ourselves, while there people do tend to think more in a collective.
Yeah.
So, that while you think it's really difficult to label things. So family-wise, people are more involved with their family. They have a lot more extended family. Here, there's people that do, but it's not necessarily the norm.
Yeah.
So a lot of people that are from either like First Nations people or migrants, they normally will tend to have more extended families and spend more time having to do all these family things. So, but yet again, we never were like that either in my own household, because we had extended family, but my dad's parents were migrants themselves, so they didn't have that many family either, and they were from a Jewish faith, so it was more about that sort of faith-centered community, although my mum is Catholic, so we actually didn't really belong to that either. It's kind of complex. So I love family, but I also like to have them. It's like, when everyone talks about things and everyone really gossips and things like that over there, but here no one talks about anything. So it's like sometimes I feel like I want that, and sometimes I feel like I don't want it at all. So
yep.
I'm pretty happy just to not have to sometimes deal with things that, all those politics and whatever discussions on the at the dinner table. And
yeah. So, and I know you've done a lot of work supporting other migrants with multicultural groups. You want to tell us a little bit about what that was like for you, and also the kind of, I guess, what you were hoping to achieve through that?
Yeah, well, I guess nobody really, no one is really born knowing that they're going to become a migrant. So I didn't know. I love traveling. Now, I always thought that it could be a possibility that I lived elsewhere, but I never thought of Australia. It was more like the US or Europe somewhere.
Yeah.
Now, when I moved to Australia, I always felt I like people. So, and I always looked for opportunities to go and meet other people or see if I could help out others. I think there's also that thing of not having a family, that you go looking for different groups. I especially are very drawn to older women as well. I don't know if it's we'll take years of therapy to work it out, but my theory is that I have kind of long for that sort of mother figure.
Yeah.
And I just love to sit there and just listen, and then I can really, there's just so much that older women know, and those skills that I definitely don't have yet. Hopefully I will one day, but I just love to watch them and listen to them and see how they deal with different things. It makes me feel pretty safe in a way when I'm with them. So I've always tried to get involved in some of those multicultural things. I also got in touch with a few people from the South America, well, Spanish speaking people in Sydney.
Yeah.
So I got across a few older women as well, because when I migrated, which was 1999, which, I mean, I traveled, I didn't know I was going to become a migrant. So I met the people that were from similar backgrounds. They were, a lot of them, a lot older, because they had migrated back in the 70s, so mid-70s, which is the year I was born. So a lot of them were kind of my mom's, or a bit younger than my mom's age. And there was some people my age, but not that many. Now there is a lot more. And then, 10 years later, there's been a whole big wave of migration from South American countries.
Yeah.
But at the time there wasn't. So the people that I knew from Spanish-speaking backgrounds were older women, a lot of them. So I was trying to help them with things like, I don't know, making a website or those things that they didn't know how to do. And they had some activities, and it was interesting. So I sort of started to learn about this, what an incorporated association was, which I had no idea at the time. So I did that. And then I decided I used to love, we don't have it anymore here, but there used to be a free paper that will come to a house, right?
Yep.
Once a week or once every 2 weeks. And in the back, there used to be like community notices where people will ask for volunteers. And I used to read that to see if there was anything that I could do to, just to, I don't know, get out and get to meet people and sort of help out and feel like I was useful too. It was difficult to get jobs too that I liked. I was working on and off all the time, and eventually I sort of got somewhere, but it did take a long time, and it was very frustrating. But because you can do it, and you get interviewed by people that really all they wanted to know was how fast you could type.
Yeah.
And do these tests on Word, Excel, and I'm like, I can teach this stuff because I grew up with it all, right? But it was hard. So anyway, so I was doing all that. And then I came across this home tutoring service, which is Mission Australia in Sydney. They have a service where they will recruit volunteers, put them through training, and then send them to homes where people needed to help with their English, normally refugees or humanitarian entrants to Australia. And the people that wanted to learn English, they for some reason couldn't attend the classes, the TAFE classes, the free ones that the government provides. So I did that, and I got to know a few people like from Afghanistan, Sudan, Iraq, and things like that. So it was very interesting, and I was teaching them English, but I guess, I could speak English. Obviously, I have an accent and all that, but they spoke a lot less. So it was about, I taught a lady that had lots of kids, so she couldn't go to the classes, plus they had no transport. Another lady that just had a little baby and was pregnant, so she didn't, and she also didn't drive. Another also mum, she had teenager kids. She was from Afghanistan, actually. And they were, middle class, wealthy people back where they come from, but here they had to leave because of political reasons. And she was lovely, and she was kind of like a grandmother to me. And so those things. So that's how I started. And then when I moved to Gladstone, I got in contact with there's a multicultural association, like, in a lot of the regional areas, and then just went from there. I was there for a little bit, but then, again, I guess it wasn't really my space. It was not necessarily where I wanted to go. So we ended up creating another organization that focused more on what migrants actually needed, instead of just that sort of entertainment where.
So that was the Strong Communities?
That's actually welcoming intercultural neighbours.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, which now has a different name. It's still around and operates in Gladstone and Rockhampton. So, and that was back in 2010. 2010. So that's a few years ago. And that's how I became a bit known in the community in a way. And, pictures in the paper and this and that, talking to people here and there, trying to get some money to run programs. And then eventually I got elected to council.
So what drove that decision, like to put yourself up as a representative?
Well, I think I've always been interested in politics. So since a quite young age, I went to a high school where we have a student body. Those things normally happening at university, like here, the same as in Argentina. But the school I went to was politicized as well from high school. So I was 13, 14 years old, and I was campaigning for my student body, not necessarily for me, but campaigning for others.
Yeah.
So, and I've always been involved or interested in politics, and that it's got a lot of things to do with sort of my upbringing. So I was born in 1976, which is the year that there was a coup in Argentina where the government was overtaken by a military dictatorship. So that's a really dark time in the history of Argentina, and it wasn't until 1982 with the Falklands War, and in 1983 Argentinians were able to vote again. So some of my earliest memories were the country being in a state of celebration because they were able to vote for the first time in a long time. And so we always we talk politics all the time. It is something that is it's just an everyday thing we do in a lot of South American countries, not just Argentina, which is different to here.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because here it's not seen as a privilege that you can vote, that we do have this in place.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that are not seen, are not valued here.
Yeah.
And at the same time, as I say, oh yeah, it's great, Australia, the stability, the sort of egalitarian sort of system, at first glance, and all those things as things that then it is very frustrating sometimes when people don't really understand what they have. Yeah. And how, I wouldn't say lucky, but circumstances have made this place very sheltered from what the world is actually really like. So when people complain, which I hear them complain all the time, it is sometimes very difficult.
Yeah.
Very, very difficult to empathize with some of the things they're saying, but that's I guess you do it is important for them. So and like one of the perfect examples, well, not perfect actually, but when we were going through the pandemic, we had a lot of people talking about asking council to do certain things which we weren't able to do at all. It was nothing to do with council, and we had no jurisdiction or powers to do anything. And because we are the closest level of government to people, they will always look to us to at least do something, even though there's nothing we can do.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of talk about COVID, as we know. And at the same, and we had, luckily, a very mild pandemic consequence. Yeah. But at the same time as these people were abusing me and talking about COVID being not real or conspiracy theory or things like that, my dad was dying in a hospital and where I couldn't see and I couldn't travel anywhere. So, yeah, those things are difficult. And, you know, I do continue to travel. I spend most of my money traveling. And you see things around. And when you come back here and you're like, oh, you know, we live in a really stable place that is, you know, within, compared to everywhere else, is quite fair, and you have a lot of power as a citizen. When people are complaining about the color of the swing in the playground, it is difficult sometimes to navigate those feelings. Yes.
Yeah. And we'll move on to a more energizing subject.
Sorry, I don't have to answer your question, actually.
It's all right. We don't have to answer the question. We're just having a conversation.
The politics. Well, I also love history too.
Well, the interesting thing with politics, okay, is the importance of women in the political sphere in our regional areas.
Mm-hmm.
Making sure that we actually have representation, because a lot of the time you don't see a lot of that.
Mm-hmm. And when you do see it, it's actually sometimes the same. I also see a lot of women that seem to mimic men, or the same system as where they've been they've been molded to be in a certain way. So I actually never thought that I would ever be in politics, to be honest. I wanted to be the president of my country. Yeah, Argentina. We have presidents over there.
And you would be great at that.
Yeah, well, that was, you know, what do you want to do? What do you want to be when you grow up? I wanted to go to the moon, or be an astronaut, or be the president of the country. So that was the two options, right? No, but I never thought about it. You know, when you go through the whole of the migration, I don't know, process, it's not just paperwork. It's a whole lot of stuff, you know, identity. It's going back and forth, and what are you going to do with this? What are you going to do with that? Also on top of that, the language situation. I didn't drive, and I didn't have a license until I was 28, for example. If I was in Argentina, I probably wouldn't drive anyway. So, so, you know, all those things, and trying to find also my way. I was 21. I also didn't know what I wanted to do in general with my life. I knew I wanted to, you know, get an education. I never stopped learning, though. I went to lots of college courses, TAFE, and all those things. But I was never sure as to what I wanted to invest in 5 years of my life, plus money, because in Argentina, there are private universities, but we have a very important and well regarded university free system. So it was the money situation. And then when I became a citizen, there was two things that I wanted to do, and that was what was driving me to become a citizen. It was to vote, again, going back to, you know, that representation, and to be able to get a loan to go to university. So anyway, so eventually I did all that. But when I was here, I was being involved with a lot of that community, the environment, the sector, all of the different agencies. I will see all the councillors as well. And I think this is also key, because it probably wouldn't happen if I was in Sydney. In Sydney, I would go, you know, travel an hour and a half to work, an hour and a half back. Probably not much involved in community events, or unless I had kids, or maybe through the school system. I don't know, but you don't never meet your councillors or your politicians. But here you do, and I'm sure it's the same in Rockhampton and in lots of other areas, regional areas. So I was working with a few people through the organization that I was with, and just everyone knew a councillor, or councillors will come. So that I never thought people will elect me either. Like, what would, I like this. I was 39 the first time I ran for council. I had 2 little kids, and what would they elect this, young, opinionated migrant woman? So anyway, I sort of thought about it, and I also got to meet a lot of the people in the sector, and it was pretty much, well, if this dude can do it, what can I do it?
Yeah.
So and that's the thing, and in a way, we women, that's what we do. We just don't even consider, because who's gonna
We talk ourselves out of it rather than
completely,
talking ourselves into it.
Yeah, that's right. And it's not just a story on social media. Men will apply for jobs that they have half the skills to, and we need to have twice as many skills to apply for the same job.
Yeah.
And I guess it's also that the scrutiny. Yeah. People are a lot more cruel to women in general. Women are a lot more cruel to women as well. So
and we saw that, like, with the political thing with Julia Gillard, in that she was vilified in a way that the men were never going to be. And like, I grew up in Victoria, we had Joan Kerner. It was the same thing. Didn't matter what was going on, it was about that person as a woman. And I think, it's, I don't know how we stop that, how we change that, but perhaps that's because we do that through showing up anyway and just pushing out those people that are like that until no one's interested in the story. It's not news anymore.
It is very difficult, like, and at the same time as I say that I love all the women and how they make me feel, I have a lot of friends and I really value a lot of my friendships with women. I have when people upset me, one of the strategies I have is to put them in the freezer, right? And it's pretty much, it's just a little sort of ceremony thing where you just write their names and in a piece of paper and then put them in the freezer. So whenever they come into your mind,
they're not taking,
you like, no, they're in the freezer.
Yeah.
And I don't have that many people, because some people you just don't think about, but others do trigger some things in you that it is more difficult to deal with. And there'll be about 5 to 7 depending on the time, and all of them are women. Oh, maybe now there's a male, but most of them are women. So, and that's actually really hard to come to terms with, because I am a feminist. So I think we have to change as well, and not just as one. All of us have to change. We have to. I have so really, really, really the most vicious attacks and things that I have had from people, they have come from women, and I don't really know why, really, because I never really done anything personal to any of them anyway, or well, not many people in general, but I think one of the things that I do that kind of bring some sort of change, even if a little bit, it's just that I am there.
Yes.
A lot of people ask me, do you make a difference, or what, or what you want to, why you want to be there? And it's, well, actually, because just being there changes what everyone else around says and thinks.
Yeah, and it's a different voice, isn't it? Like, they're getting a different voice in the decision making that they wouldn't have. Like, they've got the woman, they've got the migrant, they've got a different outside perspective, rather than it all being, just the same voices that are in the room.
Yeah, and I think also you do represent kind of a different type of, it's not just the migrantness of it, there's definitely the women. And also somehow, even though I'm 47 and I keep saying how, I'm getting old and my body's annoying me, I'm still one of the youngest ones.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's I do think a lot of the times, it'd be easier just to have a nice life and do something that is not so, it's not hard, but it's challenging sometimes. You have to stay, you have to show up, even though a lot of the times you might not want to. But then I always think, but if I don't, then who is? And I want more people to stand up so others don't always have to.
Yeah.
But I know it's not for everyone too. So.
And I also know you do a lot of things at the same time, and you have a really bad habit of saying yes to things because they're important.
Yeah.
So how do you look after yourself?
See, I do have a habit of saying yes, but I do often, probably about 3 or 4 times a year, I do my bubbles. And I don't know if it's be easy to explain, but and I also do it because I am I build what I am. I'm myself as a person, as a counselor. I don't know, if you're a doctor, you're a doctor, and then you do this. You've got to do things that doctors do. But when you're this public person, you have to also have you have to look after your profile in a way.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean you go and do something you don't like, but you also have to make sure that you touch with a number of different things around the community and around the world that you think are going to be good for that center bubble, which is you. I don't know if that makes sense. But in that bubble, there's always the education.
Mm-hmm.
So, but education could be lots of things. I mean, I like to do maybe some further university studies, but I don't know at the moment. But that doesn't mean that I will spend time reading or listening to books or doing certain courses that will add sometimes not necessarily that much knowledge, but credibility to who I am.
Yeah.
Because sadly, a lot of the things move like that. So you have to have all these. Sometimes I refuse to buy into it. I could put some letters after my name, but does it really matter? And I do challenge the system in that way, but I also have those other things. My dad always saying, "Oh, you have to do this, you have to do that." I have my service bubble where I do have things that I decide to do, and I do them purposely because they bring me certain joy. And also sometimes I leave others because that's no longer what I want to do, because I want to take something else. I have my politics bubble, which is very, very shaky right now. So, and I have my travel bubble. So travel is on its own too.
Separate it out.
Yeah.
Like that one way.
It's not about just leisure or holidays. No, it is travel. So that's very important to me. And I combine that with my family as well. And it depends on how I'm feeling at the time. I will bring more things into a bubble or less. So even though I do say yes to things, they have a purpose. Plus, I also need to. Sometimes I haven't had it for a little while. At least the last 12 months. But I used to have an art bubble because that used to also bring me some sort of. I used to do photography. I did that for a while. Well, I was in between, just after I had my first child, and so that does bring me a lot of joy.
Yeah.
And So it uses a different part of my brain. I don't know, I do a lot of craft. So I need to have those things in there.
Yep.
So yeah. And yeah, well, and also obviously be flexible. So I look after myself. I don't know, everything I do, I love.
That's good.
So, but I did, yeah, I've just been away for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
But in between that, I
the
did
photos
things.
were very traumatic.
I went to a conference, though. I try to also combine some of those things so I can take advantage. I love to work with people that are more intelligent than me. So I'm always looking for those opportunities. And yeah, so I have, at the moment, I'm also sort of trying to develop, maybe even looking what am I going to do in another 15 years?
Yeah.
So, and I know that
the next evolution.
Yeah, what it is that I can do right now that will help me in 15 years.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it's not taking over my life, but there are certain things that there's no reason why I couldn't do now, which I also love. So
cool. And if you were looking back to that girl back in Argentina, what would you say to her?
Well, this is kind of funny because I grew up also in a household where I was the oldest. So I have two brothers and the only girl. And my mum was the stereotypical housewife too. She did do some work, but again, and my dad was the breadwinner and the one that if we didn't do what my mom said, she'll go and tell him and he'll get cranky. And also, when I went to tell him that I wanted to go to university and he said, oh, what are you going to study? And I said, oh, I'm thinking of doing sociology. And he looked at me and he said, oh, what are you going to do for work then? And it was really upsetting in a way.
And I think that was the time as well. Yeah, it had to be related to a job or else what was the point?
Yeah, and my dad was always sort of driven a lot by, he had a social conscience and also a whole lot of stuff in relation to him being Jewish. But he was a businessman. So, and in his mind, everything was also always about right and left. So, which is not the way it really is. But so I was always told that I was supposed to conform to succeed. And I always struggle with that.
Yeah.
And now these days, we sell courses, especially to women, about being themselves and being authentic and being genuine and all these things. We read books. There's the lady, the one that sells the most books in the world, tells you how to be your authentic self. And maybe something along those lines, like, it's okay. You don't have to wear those clothes. You don't have to, when we had the incident in the Australian politics earlier this year last year about a woman not smiling at the Prime Minister. And I was like, well, you don't have to smile at everyone because you're supposed to. I mean, I'm not saying to swear at them or anything, but you don't have to conform. You don't have to, always be, the good girl that does what she's told. And it's okay. And that is what it's going to make the difference between you and other people. And I guess, that's probably what I will tell her.
Love it.
Not to be so, not to get so frustrated and just try to understand herself a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because also in the whole fighting, you waste a lot of time.
Yeah.
Instead of just nurturing and thinking or being proud of who you are, really. instead of trying to defend yourself all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Or fight that and try and be something else that doesn't fit, if you're right. Well, we've had a great conversation today. Is there anything else you'd like to share while you've got this particular stage as opposed to your normal conversations?
Well, there's a lot of things. Thank you for talking to me and thinking of me anyway.
I love talking to you, Natalia. It's just lovely.
Well, thank you. I'll get a lot out of talking to you as well. So it is very nice to sometimes, know that there is a genuine intent of being, I don't know, nice to each other. It's not because we have to. So I guess some things that I have done, and I wish maybe it is difficult, especially, well, not just as a migrant, but as a person in a regional area, or if you don't really, if you're not part of that place forever, you're not part of I don't know, the football club or the Rotary club or the this club or all these things, and you might not actually want to be either, because sometimes it is good. It is nice to go and talk to people, but sometimes, it comes to a point where you shouldn't keep trying to fit in, and the point comes when you need to start to create your own networks, and that's okay. So if you can definitely try to get into the networks that exist, but I encourage people to actually create their own, because you'll find that there's a lot of people there that might actually like to be in your network as well and feel the same way as you.
Yeah.
So I guess just go for it. Don't overthink it.
I love it. Thanks so much for joining us today, Natalia. It's been super interesting. So for those of you joining us, we've been yarning with Natalia Muszkat. She's a mother and wife. Are you married to your current partner?
Actually, no, ex-wife.
Okay. Ex-wife, current partner. Yeah, I should check myself better before I start.
That's okay. I was a wife once.
Councillor with Gladstone's Regional Council and board member of the Australian Local Government Women's Association. She's a regional activator with CUSAC, branch president with the Queensland Country Women's Association, which I love.
Vice president now, yeah. I've done my years, but I'm still always involved.
Cool. Chairperson and founder of Strong Communities. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Co-founder, yep.
Yes, I thought so. Previously photographer, and also a volunteer committee member with the Gladstone Local Marine Advisory Committee.
Yeah, and a few other places.
And several other. And that's why I said it was just easy to say she was busy.
Yeah. No, there's always a space for things, and there's always great learning from people. So
yeah. And I think that the big thing is just finding your own balance, like how you can do that and not burn out. Like, how do you make sure that you've got that, if you're taking on more, I lost my hand, more here, that we're bringing in more here. So,
yeah, but it's just got to do one thing at a time.
Yeah. Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you again.
The Queen Bee podcast delves into the heart of regional women's experiences, their aspirations, challenges, and journeys. It's a platform that celebrates their individuality, their resilience, and their ambition. These tales of reinvention, adaptation, inspiration, and the power of connections.